Kathy, I'm so glad to be with you. I tell you what, it's been several years. We met back in 2015. So thank you so much for joining us. I am so excited to share with you an awesome friend of mine, Kathy Burrus. And we are fellow tribe writers. She wrote her first book, and then I wrote my book after she wrote hers. But we immediately connected when we met each other, which was, I think we're figuring it out. It was 2015, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
At your first conference.
Yes, at our wonderful mentor, Jeff Goings. Oh my goodness, he really opened my eyes.
Oh yeah.
At that point, yes.
So that first Tribe Writer conference was the conference that I went to thinking that I was really being an imposter. Who am I thinking I'm a writer? Because I had never written, but I had a book I knew I had to write. And at that first conference, he said, "You're a writer when you say you are." And okay then. And that's when by the fifth conference, I was able to launch my second book. And so I was really thrilled to be able to do that. And Jeff's been a huge part of that journey. So
Kathy, you have a remarkable story there, because it is this week we are honoring mothers and Maternal Wellness Week, because it is Mother's Day coming up here in the United States, right? It's at different places or times in different countries, which I just figured that out recently. And it is Mental Health Awareness Week as well. And from a mom's perspective, and you and I are both moms, we both have now grown children, and we now have grandchildren. I've got 5. How many do you have at this point?
I have my first one.
Congratulations. How old is your little one?
2.5 months.
Oh my goodness, brand new. So you have newly entered this grandparent club. But where you are today, Kathy, you're a remarkable woman and with remarkable resilience. And I know a woman who loves the Lord. And you were doing a whole lot of right things as a young mom. And you experienced a tragedy and a huge loss, which I cannot imagine a greater pain than actually losing your own daughter to a tragic accident. And she was only 15 years old. So speak to speak a little bit of your journey, because we need to know that there's life on the other side, right? Yeah.
I had experienced a lot of losses before that. There had been issues in our life that we had had to deal with. And the thing that was different is that in those times, I always felt like I was going to get through it. I knew the Lord would help me. I knew I would take that next step. I knew good things would come. He has this way of a plan of hope. But after our daughter died, I really went to a place I'd never been before. And that was questioning everything I'd ever thought or believed about God, about myself, about me being a mom. I should have done this, that, or the other thing, all those things that we think about. And I really wondered if I was going to be able to find hope after that. I really struggled with, if God is God, he's not in the box that I had him in. And he really, the box completely broke. And I had to really come to a place where I was willing to be real with him. And I was willing to be able to see him different than I thought he was. And the beauty of it was that in the middle of the darkest time of my life, God showed up in ways that I would never have imagined him to be before.
Kathy, I want to back up a little bit, because I think there's a lot of people that are listening and hearing you for the first time. And there's this great big huge question mark in their minds. What happened? And can you just share just a nugget of that?
Sure. It was a beautiful August evening, and our daughter went for a walk. She was 15 and 4 months. And she was really excited about getting her driver's permit, but she didn't have it yet. In Ohio, you can get it at 15 and a half. And a friend called, or she went for a walk, but a friend called and said, "Let's go for coffee. who had her driver's license. It was their first girl time out. And so Alicia said, I'm going to go. And I said, that's great. And there was more to that conversation, but she was walking towards where she was going to meet the friend, and the friend came up on an intersection opposite her. Alicia was walking this way, and the friend didn't think she'd recognize her vehicle, so she beeped her horn. Alicia looked up and went, ah, and ran into the path of a car. Very, a second different, she might have not, she might have caught herself or whatever, but she, for whatever reason, that particular day didn't look. And so the friend was watching while all this happened. And
yeah. Kathy, I want to hold this, because how many years then has it been? Because there's some people that have experienced trauma, and so how many years ago has that been?
Well, interesting. This is the year that she will have lived as long as she has been gone. So it's been 15 years.
Oh my goodness.
This birthday last week, she had would have been her 30th.
Oh my.
And this August will be that date that I've been dreading. I use that word where you celebrate her life, and yet I've been dreading that day coming when she will have lived as long as she's been gone. So.
Wow. Well, there's some folks that are listening, and they may resonate. There's a trauma that they've gone through in their lives. And they think that they are, like when you do go through a trauma like this, and some, your own daughter, I mean, there is such a strong mother-child bond. I mean, if you're a mom, there's this bond there. And I've shared in my book, Beyond Messy Relationships, that it doesn't matter if whether even you've had a pregnancy loss, a miscarriage, an abortion, or lost a child that has already been born and you've spent several years with them, or there's this depth of loss. There's this strong bond. And what was that like? I mean, that must have froze you in time, I guess, didn't it? That's what trauma does, doesn't it?
Well, I felt as if I had gone into a really dark, deep, damp, ugly tunnel. And I called it the grief tunnel because it just felt like I was while I could see light everywhere, I couldn't feel it. I couldn't see it in myself. And I remember one day driving, on a beautiful fall day and noticing the brilliance of the colors and wondering why I couldn't experience them like I used to. I think our grief, they talk about how we're numb. I really came to recognize the value of that, the numbness, because there is no way I could have absorbed everything all at once. And I think so many people in trauma, or let me say this, so many people walking alongside someone in trauma, at some point feels like, oh, come on, they need to get over this. But they need to recognize that grief sometimes doesn't start unnumbing for maybe even a year or two afterwards, where we really are able to start putting together what we're experiencing. We're just surviving. We're just doing the next thing we need to do when we've experienced some deep trauma. And so that's why I encourage people that are walking alongside, recognize grief takes a long time. And we need to give that mama permission, or that person permission, whatever the trauma is.
Absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, it's kind of like, grief is very personal, isn't it, Kathy, too? It's kind of like, I do encourage it's important to grieve and grieve thoroughly. And my therapist did talk about there is a difference between grief and mourning, right? And so the grief, you can go through this, and then Elizabeth Kubler-Ross has these 5 stages of grief: the shock, the anger, the denial, and then later, acceptance, but then it comes in waves. But the morning comes is like, if you are like, you're doing something and it just reminds you of that person that you've lost, right? It's kind of that it shows up. So, I believe this is beautiful that you're, first of all, able to talk about this, because I know that there are some who've had major losses, and even years later, they can't even talk about it without breaking down. But I'm kind of wondering what's going on with you, even as you share this right now, Kathy, because I'm all about your authentic self. How are you able to talk about it now?
Um, it's interesting that we're talking now about this, because for the last 4 months, I have really spent very isolated, very much experiencing physical symptoms.
Mm.
There has been a lot going on in my life, with my parents and with my daughter having her baby and lots of things in between. But I found myself just not able to do much of anything for the last few weeks. And I wondered about that.
Mm.
Is it grief, or is it so much other stuff? And I think that the awareness that I've had is that the grief was always there. I was always anticipating this birthday. I was trying to plan for it so that I could celebrate fully. But it's not the same when the birthday girl's not there in,
Mm.
in 30
Mm-hmm.
years. And I began to realize that it wasn't just my physical body that was feeling this. There was a mental process, an emotional process, a spiritual process that I didn't, because of all the things going on in my life, I didn't have time to stop and say, wait, what's going on? My whole self didn't have an opportunity to calibrate and click together again. And I was physically ill because
Mm-hmm.
of it. I was exhausted. Grief is heavy work anyway, but that was 4 months worth of really putting myself into what I could and then collapsing.
Mm.
And so I had to be honest, I had to really get honest with
Mm-hmm.
myself about some new stuck places. Here, I
Mm.
call myself an unstuck coach. I help women get unstuck.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to identify some things that I believe, which a quote that came to me a year ago, someone gave it to me, said, you say what you say and you do what you do because you think what you think. And you
Mm.
think what you think because you believe what you believe.
Mm.
And if you process that all out, I began
Mm.
to realize that some of the things that I was believing weren't all wrong. I mean, there was a lot of truth in what I was believing, but there was just enough wrong that I was veering off, and it was causing conflict in my mental and emotional and spiritual state, which was affecting.
Wow. Oh, this is so valuable, Kathy, that you're talking about this and that you're willing to be transparent and honest. Actually, I feel that as our conversation right now, it feels like holy ground, right? You are normalizing that, yes, we go through this, and all these thoughts and everything, if they're just off a little bit, and that's something I think is so very important for all of us throughout our lives, right? We might think that we're going to finish this grief, this period of grief, but then we're not finished with how we think and how we believe, right? We're not finished with any of that yet. And so catching yourself, and see, your body is so wise, isn't it? It's so wise because it's telling you it's time to slow down, and as women, like especially women that are pregnant and there's so many hormones going on, women that are in menopause and there's so many hormonal things going on. There's so many changes in our body, and to listen to our bodies, right? And and give ourselves permission to, you know what, I'm going to take 4 months off and just relax. That's okay. And that's very good for your mental and emotional well-being.
Yes.
But I guess what I'm hearing from you is this is a journey, isn't it, Kathy? I know that like your life obviously has transformed, which I believe the Christian life is all about. Like it is death and it's resurrection. It's death and it's resurrection. And I don't know. I just think that's so true.
Yes,
Don't you?
I
It's
do.
not like just one death. It's like, okay, this is a loss I've gone through. And maybe there's some that are listening here. They've had a loss of a marriage, or a loss of a relationship, a loss of a parent, a loss of a dream, or what they expected life to be. We've all gone through this, haven't we, in 2020, in the last 18 months or so, being in this pandemic? Like, we've gone through some major losses.
Very much so.
Yeah. But to move through that grief and be willing to be transformed. But that's actually what I experienced. Like, you're able to write this out. This had to have been so therapeutic in the first place, right?
Yeah, it took 10 years to do it.
Wow. Tell me about your second book.
The second book, I took Green Hope, Lovely Traces of Hope, and I thought, okay, I'm going to put my grief on a shelf. I'm going to come to a place where I can move forward and take my next steps. And I kept bumping up against things. And again, a lot of it was thought or belief about myself or about what I thought my value was to my world. And so there was one time where I was trying to get unstuck so much. And I was sitting out on my back porch, and the words that just came to me was, envision you unstuck. What would that be? And that ended up becoming the title of book 2, which is really the journey of trying to become unstuck and confident and taking my next step. And I've just been able to work. We're almost finishing a year with a group of women that have worked through the book with me. We meet twice a month. And as I've watched them process information about how they view themselves, how they view their story, how they view God in the midst of all of that. And we're talking about stuck places and masquerades and excuses that we make at this point. But the transformation, of what happens when we move from grief or loss or stuck to our remarkable, beautiful selves,
yes,
has been life-giving as I've watched these women make the kind of transformation I've been feeling myself. So,
oh, wow. And we're on this journey. It's never a linear journey, right? We think we're going to go from here to here, but then we go it's kind of like, oh my goodness. Oh, I love that. Oh, I love that. Yes,
it's all the time.
It is like a slinky. But you know what? I think with your journey, and I think with a lot of us, we get tuned into, there is a bigger picture. There is a bigger picture. There is a bigger purpose. And, like, I know you'll see your daughter someday, but she's like blessed you also, right? With some giftedness and I have discovered, hanging out with writers and speakers and other people who are creative, there's major things that happen, but there's a bigger story, and there is resurrection and life beyond the grief and the trauma. And you can choose to live very small, or you can open up to this bigger and tuning into this bigger story. But wow.
It is a risk. It is a risk. You talk about the air.
Yes.
The importance that we're being aware, and that we're being intentional. There is a risk that we're going to hurt, but we're already hurting. What if?
There you go.
I just spoke with a woman yesterday. She's a nurse, and she talks about how one of her favorite things is to clean festering wounds and let them heal. But in her own story, it's been really hard to deal with the festering wounds of her emotions and the things that happened in her past. But in the last year, she's been doing that. And she said, I can be a nurse in my own life. And I thought, yes.
Wow. So, you're doing a remarkable work. So I do have your it's kathyburrus.com, and it's in the description there. And do get Kathy's books. And where are those, on Amazon, or where books are sold?
Right now they're on Amazon. Yeah.
Awesome. And I would love for you to connect. And if you've not gotten beyond messy relationships, and you need to get beyond messy relationships into your authentic life, I'd love to connect with you also. And you can reach me at Judy at judycounselor.com, and that's available where books are sold. But Kathy, it has been a beautiful thing to reconnect with you. You are a remarkable woman you're giving hope to women. And I I want all of us to just really be aware, you know, of what women do go through, what moms go through, right? And I just really want to uplift. If you are wherever you are in your life, there is hope beyond the pain, and there is a bigger life and a bigger story. So thank you so much for joining.
Oh, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.